This is NPR. I'm Alice Green.
Welcome back to Chrono Tales, where the most terrifying stories are the ones that actually happened. I'm your host, and tonight we venture into the scorching summer of 1978, when the city of Sacramento, California, was gripped by a terror unlike anything it had ever seen. This is the true story of the Vampire of Sacramento. Detective Ray Biondi had seen plenty of crime scenes in his 20-year career, but nothing had prepared him for what he found when they finally got a warrant to search Chase's apartment on January 27th, 1978. Richard Trenton Chase lived alone in a one-bedroom apartment at 1730 T Street in Sacramento. To his neighbors, he was just another strange young man who kept to himself. Pale, thin, with wild eyes that seemed to see things others couldn't. But behind his locked door, Chase was descending into a madness that would shock even seasoned homicide detectives. Detective Ray Biondi had seen plenty of crime scenes in his 20-year career, but nothing had prepared him for what he found when they finally got a warrant to search Chase's apartment on January 27th, 1978.
The smell hit us first. Death, decay, and something else. Something metallic. The living room was splattered with blood, on the walls, the ceiling, even the furniture. And in the kitchen, the refrigerator was full of body parts. Human organs in Tupperware containers, like some kind of sick meal prep. There were dishes in the sink, stained with what looked like blood. This wasn't just a crime scene, it was a slaughterhouse.
But the apartment was just the end of Chase's story. To understand how a 27-year-old man became known as the Vampire of Sacramento, we need to go back to where it all began, to a childhood marked by violence, mental illness, and early warning signs that everyone chose to ignore. Richard Chase was born on May 23, 1950, to a middle-class family in Sacramento. His father was strict and often violent, his mother emotionally distant. From an early age, Chase exhibited what psychologists call the McDonald triad, the three behaviors that often predict violent tendencies in adulthood. He wet his bed well into his teens. He was obsessed with starting fires, and most disturbing of all, he tortured and killed small animals. Neighbors reported finding dead cats and rabbits in their yards, their bodies mutilated in ways that suggested more than simple childhood curiosity.
When I examined Chase's childhood records years later, the warning signs were everywhere. Teachers reported that he would stare at classmates for long periods without blinking. He talked to himself constantly, and he had an obsession with blood. He would pick at scabs until they bled, then watch the blood with fascination.
By high school, Chase's behavior had become increasingly erratic. He believed that his blood was turning to powder inside his veins. He thought his heart would stop beating if he didn't consume blood regularly. His mother, desperate for help, took him to psychiatrists, but in 1968, mental health treatment was primitive at best.
He was diagnosed with paranoid schizophrenia, but the medications available then were crude. Chase would take them for a while, seem to improve, then stop taking them and spiral back into psychosis. It was a cycle that repeated itself throughout his 20s.
After high school, Chase lived with his mother, spending his days in a haze of delusions and paranoia. He believed that someone was poisoning him. He thought his apartment was bugged. And increasingly, he became obsessed with the idea that he needed fresh blood to survive. December 29th, 1977. Ambrose Griffin was driving through his quiet Sacramento neighborhood when he stopped to help what he thought was a stranded motorist. Chase had been standing beside his broken-down car on the side of the road, looking helpless and lost.
You need some help there, son.
Those would be Ambrose Griffin's last words. Chase pulled out a .22 caliber pistol and shot the 51-year-old engineer in the head. He then dragged Griffin's body into a nearby field, where he committed acts so disturbing that even experienced forensic investigators struggled to process the scene.
Griffin's body was mutilated beyond recognition. Chase had opened up the torso and consumed parts of the organs. The coroner said it looked like an animal attack, but no animal removes organs with that kind of precision.
But Griffin was just the beginning. 3 weeks later, on January 23rd, 1978, Chase committed what would become known as the Wallen murders, a crime so brutal that it changed the way Sacramento police investigated homicides. Teresa Wallen was 3 months pregnant when Chase broke into her home in the middle of the afternoon. Her husband was at work, her neighbors were busy with their own lives, and no one heard her screams.
Mrs. Wallen fought for her life and the life of her unborn child. The house showed signs of a struggle: overturned furniture, broken glass, blood spatter patterns that told the story of her final moments.
Chase shot Teresa Wallen in the head, then committed acts that defied comprehension. He mutilated her body, consumed her blood, and performed what could only be described as ritualistic violence on her corpse.
The medical examiner's report was 15 pages long. I've never seen anything like it in 30 years of police work. This wasn't just murder. It was something else entirely. Something inhuman.
Chase's final crime occurred on January 27th, 1978, at the home of Evelyn Maroth. This time, there would be multiple victims and a witness who would lead police directly to the killer. Evelyn Maroth was babysitting her 20-month-old nephew David when Chase broke in. Also in the house were Maroth's 6-year-old son Jason and her friend Dan Meredith, who had stopped by for a visit. What happened next was a massacre. Chase shot Dan Meredith first, then Evelyn Maroth. 6-year-old Jason tried to hide in a bedroom closet, but Chase found him and shot him execution style.
The Meredith scene was the worst I'd ever investigated. 3 people dead, and little David Meredith was missing. We knew Chase had taken the baby, but we didn't know if the child was alive or dead.
The break in the case came from an unexpected source. A neighbor had seen a strange man leaving the Maroth house carrying something wrapped in a blanket. The witness got a partial license plate number, which led police to Richard Chase.
Copy that.
When police arrived at Chase's apartment, they found him covered in blood, incoherent and talking to invisible people. The baby's body was discovered in a box in Chase's bedroom, along with evidence linking him to all the previous murders.
Chase didn't resist arrest. He seemed almost relieved that it was over. He kept saying that he had to do it, that his blood was turning to powder and he needed fresh blood to survive. He truly believed that what he was doing was necessary for his survival.
You have the right to remain silent. Anything you say can and will be used against you.
Richard Chase's trial began in January 1979. Despite clear evidence of severe mental illness, the jury found him guilty of 6 counts of first-degree murder. He was sentenced to death and sent to San Quentin State Prison. Chase never made it to the gas chamber. On December 26, 1980, he was found dead in his cell, having overdosed on antidepressants that he had been saving up for weeks. Even in death, he had chosen to control his own fate.
The Chase case highlighted the failures in our mental health system. Here was a man who showed clear signs of severe psychosis from childhood, yet he fell through every safety net we had. 6 people died because we as a society failed to recognize and treat severe mental illness.
Today, Sacramento has largely moved on from the terror of 1978. The apartments where Chase lived have been demolished, the crime scenes have new owners, and the city has worked hard to forget the nightmare of the Vampire of Sacramento. But for the families of Ambrose Griffin, Teresa Wallen, Evelyn Maroth, Jason Maroth, Dan Meredith, and baby David Maroth, the pain never truly goes away. They were the victims of one man's descent into madness, a descent that began in childhood and ended in tragedy that could have been prevented. The story of Richard Chase serves as a reminder that monsters aren't born from ancient curses or supernatural forces. Sometimes, they're created by neglect, untreated illness, and a society that looks away until it's too late. And that concludes tonight's journey into the darkness of human nature. Remember, the most terrifying monsters are often the ones that walk among us, looking just like everyone else, until the moment they reveal their true nature. Thank you for joining me in exploring these dark chapters of history. Until next time, stay safe, and remember, sometimes the real monsters are the ones we fail to help before it's too late.